Good evening, everybody. Today is Friday, November 6th, 2020, and you are watching or listening to another edition of Forward Maryland. From the Idea Lab at Forward Maryland World Headquarters, I'm Bill Woodcock.
I'm Jason Booms.
And I'm Steve Hunt. And in honor of the next president of the United States of America, I am rocking the University of Delaware gear for my fellow Blue Hen. Dance, chicken, dance. Let's close this show.
And Steve, thank you for joining us again this evening. I did not think as creatively of you, but I channeled my inner Red Auerbach and lit a victory cigar this evening.
Hey, it works for me.
But a little victory cigar, because the election of 2020 brought good tidings to Democrats and could possibly bring us more. However, it wasn't all sunshine and roses for the blue team, and there were some interesting things for the red team to hang their hats on. So, without any further ado, let's break down the results of the 2020 elections as we know them so far and as we feel that they're going to be in the same order in which we did in our last podcast. So going to my magic wall, nowhere as technologically elaborate as John King or Steve Kornacki's. For president, we have Joe Biden with 253 electoral votes. Some say 264 because Fox and others gave Arizona already to Biden. 213, this says 215, it's an error, for President Trump. Now, as of the time of this recording, Biden is, of course, ahead in Pennsylvania by about 15,000 votes. Ahead in Arizona by about 40,000, ahead in Nevada by about 22,000, ahead in Georgia by about 4,000, and behind in North Carolina by about 45,000. So it looks as if, with multiple possible paths, Joe Biden will be the 46th president of the United States very soon. Jason, what make you of the 2020 election results for president?
Well, it's good to see a recognizable map again, I suppose. Taking a look at the Midwest, minus Ohio, of course, minus Iowa, unfortunately. It looked like it should have, and not obviously not a best case scenario. But it looks like enough for the win, enough for what it may eventually at the end of the day be a fairly comfortable win. I've got a habit of going through and rating the presidential elections based on how few votes it would take to flip an outcome. Initially, when the results were coming in, I was like, this may be one of the top 2 or 3 closest races of all time. But based on where the count is headed, it looks as though it may end up being a pretty decent night for former Vice President Biden.
Steve?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Jason's analysis. I think the 4 words we need to say and everybody needs to say are the following. Joe Biden was right. Everybody crushed on him when he came out and it was about, the soul of America and we just need to change course. They crushed it when he said, we could come together as a country. He didn't have 86,000 plans. He wasn't trying to burn the whole house down. He was too old. He was too moderate. He was too this. I would submit that nobody else of the 25 Democrats running could have pulled this off based on the vote count and the way the electorate fell. I don't see anybody else having the ability to pull it off, especially in some of the states where he pulled it off. Love them all. Love some of them more than others. Some of them maybe I don't love. But I think Biden was the man for the job that needed to be done, which is to end Trump. I think there are some encouraging signs. Jason, you're right. The map is much more recognizable. A couple of quick things I would say. Any Democrat running for president who spends more than a minute and a half because they have to in Florida is wasting their time. Until further notice, Florida is gone. It just is. The The investments made in Atlanta over recent years, starting with Stacey Abrams having won the governorship. I don't care who's sitting in the chair, she won. But that investment is worth it, and it will continue to be worth it. Maybe as early as these two runoffs. I think Georgia has Virginia potential. Arizona, I love the potential out there. I think it's poised to be more. I won't say New Mexico, which is a lot bluer, but more like a Colorado. I think there's some possibilities there. I think Texas is still a ways off, but I think it's getting closer. I think North Carolina is getting closer. So there's some good signs for the future. I know a lot of Dems wanted the big blowout, the early knockout. That probably would have meant Florida or Texas or even Ohio. We saw some of the early numbers. I think that was some fool's gold. I think that the Biden people played it exactly right. They sent some forces into Florida just because, let Bloomberg spend some money so they didn't have to spend their own. But there was some good stuff there. On the flip side, and we'll break the numbers down, the fact that this was even close says a lot of things about a lot of voters out there. And I would love to have conversations as to why they could overlook the last 4 years, the last 9 months, 230,000 people dead plus, and say, yeah, I want 4 more years of that. I just, whatever your singular issue is, whether it's something you want or hatred of Democrats, how you could, I just don't get it. This should have been the blowout we all thought it was going to be. The fact that it didn't turn out to be one and won't, I think it says something about this country, about how divided we are. And I don't know where we go from here, especially with some of the results on Capitol Hill. So.
I just want to, Steve, one thing actually, you raised a really valid point. Trump is a horrible Republican candidate. I mean, amongst the base, such as it is, I mean, obviously he's strong. But if you take a look at states, behind the blue wall, like Maine, where Trump getting 43% of the vote, New Hampshire, 45.5% of the vote, not to mention the big states in the Midwest where, or Pennsylvania, where we're still counting, and Nevada and Arizona. It's one wonders what would happen if a more responsible conservative, or theoretically more responsible conservative were to run, say Tom Cotton, for example. It's frightening to think about if the Republicans got their stuff together, what they could do.
Yeah.
As Bill's reflecting.
Well, yeah. I'm watching actually Arizona come in with about 4,700 more votes, and they're almost exactly evenly split between Biden and Trump, 2361 to 2337. So the lead holds as of this moment. A number of things, I think, to what both of you said. Steve, I hear you about the thing with Florida. Well, actually, the first thing I'm going to say is to speak to your point about Joe getting into this race. He was pretty much retired, pretty much done, happy with his career in public service, happy with his life. And I for one, will buy that when he heard what Trump said 6 months into his presidency or so, after the Charlottesville protests and the killing of that young woman, that's when he decided to get into it. And you cannot, I mean, Joe Biden seems to be maybe one of the nicest people and most humble people ever involved in national politics. But you cannot not be at that level and not have ego. And so to realize that he was going to risk a 47-year career for something that was not a done deal at the outset. I mean, people thought it was Bernie's time. They wanted to give Elizabeth Warren a chance. Here were some up and comers like Buttigieg and Castro, and Kamala, who were going to make an impact. He laid it all on the line, and he called in every one of his chips from that 47-year career, and he got this stuff done. We remember how that campaign was on life support when Jim Clyburn endorsed him in South Carolina. And he was also going to be in trouble because Mike Bloomberg had jumped in, and Bloomberg was going to be the moderate's choice. And then You have to be lucky as well as good. Elizabeth Warren took him down in a debate in the first half hour. And instead of everybody flocking to Elizabeth Warren, they flocked to Joe. So, he not only did he put up when he said and did what he said he could do, but he totally validated, his entire career, which he did not have to validate. Look at the other side of it. Look if Clyburn had, look at if either of those things I just mentioned hadn't happened. Oh, Joe Biden was a great vice president to Barack Obama, but 3 times he ran for president. He couldn't get the job done. He just couldn't, he couldn't get up to that level, blah, 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 blah. So fate takes quite a hand there, as well as good fortune and opportunities that certainly he created. The map is interesting. Stacey Abrams is officially awesome. She was before, but her work with Fair Fight obviously has paid off. We're going to get down to the Senate in a minute, but looks like both of those seats are going into runoffs. And in fact, if Democrats win both of those, it looks like, Dems may control a 51-50 Senate majority. And that's a pipe dream in itself, but not an unrealistic one.
Hey, can I throw something out there since you're talking to Stacey Abrams? By the way, Stacey Abrams is in a position now where she can pretty much ask for and receive anything she wants right now. But there are a lot of other people who are behind Stacey Abrams and have done a whole lot of work, a lot of different grassroots organizations. I'm just going to be blunt and say this. Those who want this country to go in a good direction and want to Trump out, say thank you to Black people. Okay? Just say it. Philly, Detroit, Milwaukee, Atlanta, you look at all the swing states, and it was that urban vote that carried it over. And, we could break down demographics, but the one demographic that came through, first getting Biden going, Jim Clyburn, you mentioned him, but then through the general election, honorable mention to the McCain family, somewhere in heaven, John McCain and John Lewis are high-fiving at the prospect of being a part of getting Donald John Trump out of office.
Oh, absolutely. If you look forward to 2024, and no matter how good a job Biden might do as president, I cannot see an 82-year-old man running for re-election. Of course, he hasn't officially ruled it out, nor should he at this point, but reality kind of sets in. The two people who emerge as the leaders of the Democratic Party are Kamala Harris and Stacey Abrams. Yeah. I don't see another person in there. A case, I guess, could be made for Pete, but I don't, I think Pete has to run another election in Indiana and win it before you could put him up there on that level.
I'm gonna throw one more out, actually, because I do think that for her transformative influence, despite the fact she doesn't hold much power in Congress, what she's been able to do as part of the squad, I think you have to look at AOC as a leader of the party. And quite frankly, given what might happen with a break in the Democratic Party the next couple of years, what AOC decides to do may decide whether or not that effort succeeds or not.
Oh, now you were bringing up some serious palace intrigue, which I think also is going to be a point in a minute. Or we can just go to Congress now.
Hey, Jason, I just want to throw one out there for you. And I've said this, not here on this podcast, but I'll say it now. I still think the squad member who has the greatest potential going forward is Presley. I honestly think she's the one that will come out of that squad because if you notice, even with Trump, he goes after Omar, he goes after AOC, takes a few shots at God always for you. Yep. But Presley is the one that doesn't normally get touched. I think that AOC certainly is a force, and I think if she wants it, she certainly will have a following. But I keep looking at Presley and saying she might be the one of that group that you down the road you see in the Senate and beyond.
Yeah, she does have that. Granted, she's relative moderate, so I could definitely see her statewide. She has that skill set.
And she's Liz Warren. I think she's got that kind of feel to it.
And Biden's lead just grows by another 2,500 in Nevada. So, Steve, keep interjecting.
Okay.
Every time you do, it's like ringing a bell, and It's a Wonderful Life. Joe
Just
Biden.
keep. How about you do Elvis, man?
So, I mean, I'll briefly wrap up because I do want to get to this congressional thing. The map is a little bit more normal, but the map also has peril in it as much as there's opportunity. I don't think Texas is a doable function for 2024. I think 2028 maybe with the changing demographics. Georgia is definitely in play. Would be nice to see North Carolina get some sensibility next election. I mean, they went for Obama. We need to crack the nut with Carolina. Maybe in 24, if it's a Harris candidacy, who knows? The blue wall was held and is actually turned over to Biden in bigger numbers than Trump won them last time out. And disappointments in Ohio and in Florida. The Cuban American community, anybody who has watched the documentary 537, the local politics in South Florida plays a tremendously big role in presidential politics. I mean, as much as people would like to think they do elsewhere, I know they do here in Howard County. Local politics doesn't really do that much in terms of deciding who's going to vote for president. I mean, I think in Howard County, Biden won by 41 percentage points, far bigger margin than any candidate for governor, county executive, and so forth. But in South Florida, they do. And I'm not sure exactly what was the problem there with Biden or Obama, but they stayed Republican. I mean, it seems that the Trump campaign's whole cry of socialism, communism, going to destroy your neighborhoods, it seems that was playing down there.
And also in Congress, because two Democrats got taken out.
Remember, Biden got a lot of crap early in the summer for not really doing much in South Florida. And there's part of me that wonders if that wasn't intentional, if they weren't already figuring that, there's too much energy that would have to go into the Cubans in South Florida in order to win it and make a big play for Florida. The last thing I'll say, and then you can reflect on this, or we can go to the Congress. I don't understand these polls. The margin of error was roughly about 6 points. And those could be applied to various states as well as nationally. Haven't done enough looking into it yet to see, if that 6 points is even across battleground states. Would kind of indicate that it would be. Ohio was kind of picked to be about a 1% for Trump. It was about a 6%. Florida was 2 or 3 for Biden. It's gone about 3 or 4% for Trump. Texas was going to be about even Steven. It wound up being about 5% for Trump. So again, I don't know if that's just the mirage of the shy Trump voter or what it is, but there clearly is some error there. Or perhaps it was just that this was an election in 3 phases, with the election day voting, the in-person early voting, and all the mail-in ballots. I don't know. It would be.
No, I just wanted to say, because actually, my class, we had this conversation yesterday because I knew walking in, the students would want to ask, how come the pollsters didn't get it right? And of course, it's a fun question every 4 years. But my take on it was, it was a very challenging model to try to recreate, especially given COVID, given changing voting patterns. I think there might have been certain assumptions going into it which favored the Democrats. And that had people run a more conservative estimate, I'm always likely to turn out, which I think they frankly should have done, given the fact that you've seen this before, like in 1990 in the North Carolina U.S. Senate race, Jesse Helms famously against Mayor of Charlotte Harvey Gantt. And Gantt, according to the polls, he was in pretty good shape against Helms, but there was a very quiet vote that wouldn't tell interviewers, but it was pro Helms, and Helms goes on to win.
But yet, as a good project management professional, I know that he has an awesome chart named after him and will have so forever.
Yeah, I still blame Michael Jordan.
That's what you should.
I should too. So let's talk a little bit of Congress because the low-tech board on the Idea Lab has some sobering commentary here. So the Senate balance, per the New York Times, is currently tied at 48-48 with projections and votes not in. So many people we thought were going to win lost, like almost all of them, except Mark Kelly and John Hickenlooper. Thanks, guys, for backing us up. Sarah Gideon, where were you? Amy McGrath, where were you? None of us predicted Amy McGrath would win. But the House of Representatives, it looked like single-digit wins for the Dems, but now the projection is about 10 seats for the Republicans, 5 to 10. Getting to what we were talking about, it's not just the Republican Party that's going to have to do some soul searching, but the Democrats too. Is Nancy Pelosi going to be Speaker come January? If not, does it become AOC or a squad member or, somebody else from the class of 2018? Steve, what do you think? I mean, it's weird to say with a Democrat who's going to be the president, but there's some soul searching to be done. Where do you think this is headed?
Well, actually, I think there's more soul searching on the Democratic side than the Republican side. They know who they are, and I think to your point and Jason's point, if they ran somebody not named Trump, like a Tom Cotton or a Nikki Haley or something like that, who knows what happens there? So, there was a call I was reading about this amongst the Democratic caucus in the House, and apparently, F-bombs were flying, and it pretty much became a shouting match between the moderates and the liberals, with the moderates saying, it's too much about socialism and defunding the police and this, that, and the other. And the other end, I think Parmal out of Washington was saying, well, no, it's, tell that to the people in the urban areas who basically carried Trump's ass. Carried Trump's ass out the door. So I think there's a lot of soul searching. As far as the results, my real head scratcher is Maine. How does Biden win Maine? I know there's a whole congressional district part, but overall he won Maine, but Gideon didn't. And, maybe we have underestimated Susan Collins and her ability to connect with the people of Maine in such a way that they keep sending her back. I just don't know. I think it'll end eventually. The same thing happened with Claire McCaskill in Missouri. She kept finding ways to win and eventually ran out of tricks. Or horrible candidates running against her. But that's the only head scratcher. The rest of the Senate races, when you peel back the tons of money that went into it and the hopes, there was a lot of red states. South Carolina is a red state. North Carolina is a red-ish state. And Cunningham pretty much crapped the bed late in the campaign with the whole, and I'm sure Jason's going to break out his phone again like he did in our last little soiree. But Texas, I can go on and on. Missouri, Mississippi, Alabama. These were red states. So even, I guess my biggest disappointments besides Gideon were probably Iowa. I thought Greenfield had a real shot. Maybe because I just think the guy would be a good senator, and I thought he had a shot with Steve Bullock in Montana. But this was a very red-friendly cycle. There's some definite possibilities in 22. The House, again, we talked about Florida, 2 seats in that South Florida area, include Donna Shalala, flipped. So I think there's definitely some conversations that need to go on within the Democratic caucus. It'll be interesting to see where they go going forward. Because like I said, I think the Republicans, they're going to walk away from this saying, we just don't need somebody named Trump at the top and we're good. We can keep running on the same shit, just not with him.
Steve, I swear Biden got 400 more votes in Pennsylvania. you were doing this the whole time. You could just talk for the next 20 minutes. We're good. Jason, what make you of this mess?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean that's the interminable struggle in the Democratic caucus is left right, and without Trump serving as a unifying enemy, it does get a little bit more challenging as far as direction is concerned. I mean, yeah, when you read about centrists, starting to question Nancy Pelosi's leadership, and I'm no particular fan of Nancy Pelosi, for the record. Fine, whatever, but it's. I think the Democratic Party does need to consider what our vision is moving forward. I mean, who are we as a party? I mean, we're really not the party of Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden's there; he's the one in line. But but to have a governing vision that's capable of actually being a functioning majority, what takes us back there against a more of a normal candidate? I mean, that's the question. And also what'll get. And another thing too, which the party has to think about is, I mean, I know redistricting is coming up. The Democratic Party historically has done a terrible job definitely in the 2000s and the 2010s as far as developing districts at the state level that could be won by Democrats and serve as incubators for movement up to higher office. So it's getting that pipeline going. We have a decent presidential pipeline right now, but a lot of other places it's fairly weak bench for the federal and state roles. So I just want to see us do a better job of organizing locally. I think that's the big concern I have right now. If we're going to see a transformational election, we need to have it take place at closest to the ground as humanly possible.
Are you saying, Jason, that with Maryland's wonderful congressional map, there's no way to have like a farm system of talented state legislators like move up to run in the inkblot districts of like say 3, 7, 2, 4, 5, almost all of them?
Well, that's an unfair question because I have a horrifically low opinion of most state legislators. Just granted, most, but
some listen to this podcast.
Oh, and I'm fans of theirs.
Yay!
But with a couple exceptions. But depending on who's listening. But no, I mean, Maryland is exception.
Warren Miller.
Maryland is the kind of state where, because it is functionally a one-party state, it does what it does, and leadership is going to come out regardless of how the districts are drawn. But it's states that are more competitive, like your Michigans, that should see far more balance. I mean, I just keep thinking back to the fact that we have 5 Supreme Court justices that were selected by Republicans who never should have been elected to high public office. So just reworking taking it back down to what was the cause of that and thinking about realignment possibilities. And I think the Democratic Party needs to get better on the technical element of governing.
So I think that both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue are going to have a lot of work in these next couple of years. I mean, getting back to my earlier comment that this is Kamala Harris's and Stacey Abrams' party now, and I know we've thrown out other names. I believe that Stacey Abrams has a lot to teach we Democrats about how to operate in rural areas and how to communicate a democratic message out to people in the hinterlands of their respective states. And I mean, parts of Georgia are about as rural as it gets, also suburban, also urban. Kamala Harris is the vice president, and I don't know what her portfolio is going to be, but I agree with your analysis, Jason. I mean, Joe's there, he's the instrument, and he's going to be the guy who hopefully can get stuff done with Mitch and get some real things happening in terms of stimulus, infrastructure, a lot of things that Trump has flushed down the toilet. But the building of the party has to be, I think, in part coming from the White House, and in part coming from Stacey Abrams, and in part coming from Congress. And to what both of you said about current leadership in Congress, it's got to go. We are, I believe, beyond the time of Nancy Pelosi and especially Steny Hoyer in leadership in the House of Representatives. At this point, I basically have no preference as to who those new leaders are. But if those people are elected again to head the caucus, the Democratic caucus, we will have left our underbelly wide open to be abused in 2022 by Republicans who now will only need to win about 10 more districts in order to retake the House. And you can rest assured that, like what will happen in Maryland, when congressional districts are redrawn, most of the state legislatures are Republican. They are going to redraw districts that will favor Republicans, and they're going to do everything they can to yell socialist, communist, whatever in 2 years the rallying cry is going to be. Maybe there'll be Contract with America 3, who knows? But remember, there was a 2. And you know, they will, I mean, they're going to come gunning. There's no doubt about that. And I would hope that the people in charge of the House of Representatives now realize that, but I don't think they have. I don't see those future leaders who were being groomed. No one talks about Nancy Pelosi's heir apparent. No one talks about someone who's going to grab the gavel. Keith Ellison, who was a perfectly decent candidate for Speaker of the House, is now the Attorney General in Minnesota. I don't know who that person's going to be, but it's got to be somebody, and it's got to be somebody with some vision who is going to be willing to work with these other people I mentioned, the Vice President, Stacey Abrams, others, who I think Stacey Abrams would be a terrific DNC chair, but if the DNC was something truly about party building, not if it was figurehead and comms. But
bear in mind too that you know, Stacey Abrams, she could be the Speaker of the House. The Speaker doesn't need to be a member of the House. So you know, if the party was looking to move beyond Nancy Pelosi, they can go outside the House.
That would be a beautiful dream, but I don't think that's ever happened.
No, it has not.
Well, I'll tell you two things, guys, about it. And Bill, I was just about to say what you said, so I will just second it. I think Stacey Abrams, her next logical place would be to chair the DNC, because she does understand it. To Jason, your point about party building at the grassroots and really almost building it, you know, taking what Stacey did in a place like Georgia and expanding that, because I can't think of a state or anywhere in the country where that would not work. So I think giving her charge of the DNC. I think the other thing here is Biden, you know, said it himself that I think it was during a speech, or I forget when it was, but that he's more of a transitional figure. And I think that's absolutely right. Biden had one job. His job was get rid of Trump. He was the guy to get that guy out, because nothing else happens without him. Now, Dems, we did not capture enough of the House and the Senate to really execute as much as we wanted to, but we got the big job done. Let's not forget that. So I think Stacey Abrams, if given that power to build that organization at a grassroots level, I think that would be one way to get this process going and position the Democratic Party to have that message that can be carried throughout, because she clearly knows how to do that. So I think that would be a natural place for her. You know, it's certainly, no offense to Tom Perez, but if I hear that he's going to continue on, that's going to be a mistake. I think it, you know, if Biden says, well, Tom, you can just keep the job, I think that's a horrible mistake. There needs to be new blood, and I think Stacey's it. The House and the Senate, you're absolutely right, because not only is it Pelosi, I mean, you look at her lieutenants, Steny Hoyer, Jim Clyburn, who, you know, yes, he saved Biden and gave us the president, but still, all these guys and ladies are all up there. And the Senate's no different with Chuck Schumer, et cetera. So, you know, there needs to be something done to shake that up. If it's the same group of people, I think you guys are right. Dems are not going to be positioned going forward to do what they need to do to put that message out and have that platform to carry what should be a winning message going forward. And what it does have to be more progressive. It just does.
Well, I have wonderful thoughts about Tom Perez's future, as well as who the next senator from California should be. But we have about 10 to 15 minutes to wrap things up. So I think we should probably move along to the one race of note in Maryland, where the great Kim September Klacik uh, played it out at about what, 40% of the vote against Kwesi Mfume for Maryland's 7th district. Any thoughts about that? She did better than the what, 1/3 we were projecting.
Well, didn't Steve, didn't you nail that percentage? Weren't you at 27 and a half or something overall?
Oh, that was Larry Pretlow. We're getting
Yeah,
there.
I was not that high on her. And in my initial, I think Mfume was a horrible candidate. I think that he coasted, and I think Klacik did work, and you know, I think she stirred up enough of a vote to get to that number. I think I did not hear of Mfume really actively going hard at this thing. I think he pretty much just thought it was in the bag. So I lay some at his feet, and she put in the work, and spent the money to at least make it a better race than it should have been.
Still, I believe next stop, One America News or the Trump TV network.
Yeah.
Or RT maybe, but
yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, it was disconcerting seeing the number of supporters that she had waving signs outside the polling places. Because that's something you're not used to seeing for Republican congressional candidates in this part of the country.
Hey, $18 an hour goes far. I mean, that goes to show that a $15 minimum wage is awesome.
And I do hope that they spend the money well. I mean, given the many problems some of her volunteers seem to have based on my brief conversations with them.
Jason, I'm going to guarantee you they already have.
Oh, yeah. God bless them.
So the last races we shall examine will be in the last 10 minutes of our fine episode this evening, shall be the Board of Elections races, Board of Education races in Howard County. And rather than go through them all one by one, let's just take them as a batch. So in District 1, we had Christina Delmont Small win with, I believe she was in the low 60s. Antonia Watts won with 77 or 72% of the vote, which means that Larry Pretlow II received 27% of the vote, which our very own Steve Hunt predicted on the nose. So this is why he's like the magic man tonight. Jody Mosley won in the walkover. That was the District 3 race. Yun Liu handily defeated Cindy Valancourt for District 5. And in the heavyweight brawl, that was much more like a council race or maybe a U.S. Senate race than a local Board of Education race. Jen Mallow defeated Suzanne Palmer by 52 to 47 with 1% for write-in candidate Julie Hotop. Any thoughts from either of you about the Board of Education races in Howard County, which leaves the Board of Education very interestingly with 3 known Democrats, 3 known Republicans, one who skirts the fence between blue, red, and purple. Also, 1 man, 6 women, and also 3 Caucasians, 3 whites, 1 African American, 1 Hispanic person, Jolene Mosley, and 2 Chinese Americans.
Well, it feels like a functional conservative majority. I mean, that's the thing that it comes down to at the moment for me. Seeing the percentage that came in for District 5, frankly, I was a bit surprised by the margin. I mean, I thought that maybe the name identification with Valancourt would hold, and that should make the race a little bit closer. But just thinking about the demographics out there, the partisan breakouts, and looking what happened at the margin in District 1, it does feel as though the board has a more conservative tone to it now.
Steve?
I would agree, and we talked about some of the results at the presidential level, the congressional level. Certainly, those who you would associate with Republicans or conservatives, or however you want to coin it, forget this nonpartisan shit. I'm done with it. They overperformed. Christina Delmont Small, I thought that would be a close race. She blew out Moyet. I mean, just straight up did. Larry Pretlow, I think a 27%. That is an overperformance. I don't think. I threw it out there because I thought his personal support was there, but that is overperforming. Certainly Palmer at where she is, and then Lou blowing out Valancourt. So I think that it sets up some interesting elements for 2022. If you are a progressive or a Democrat in Howard County, you may not want to be as comfortable as maybe you thought you could be after 2018. Because I think District 1, I've put it out there. I would not be surprised to see Christina Delmont Small running for county council on the Republican side. So that would be my initial thought is I think the conservative side of the fence here in Howard County overperformed in those races that were competitive, not including 3.
So I understand that the most intellectually developed thing that Howard County Republicans do as an organization is at their monthly meeting at the Columbia Presbyterian Church, they go into the fellowship hall, lie down on their side, and spin around on their ears doing the curly shuffle. This is not a bastion of intellectual thought anymore in Howard County. However, if I was cogent and a Republican, I would look at a candidate who got 47% in District 4, and I would have a very serious conversation with that candidate about possibly running countywide as a Republican, maybe for county executive. Suzanne Palmer had a great operation. There really were not the haymakers that I had thought I was going to see thrown at her. Discussing her record, discussing her qualifications, discussing any of the other attributes. She kind of, didn't really, she really kind of got a ride. The media, the online media was talking about school choice and privatizing schools and, charter schools and pay for play schools in Howard County. But it seems to me that those critiques only went so far. Those didn't saturate into the community. And, she came scarily close to knocking off a qualified incumbent in Howard County's most liberal district. Otherwise, yes, as I said at the outset, these results definitely give more conservative forces, at least locally, a good amount of hope. Interestingly, Howard County now boasts 3 Chinese American representatives. Counting State Senator Lamb. But 2 of them are on the more conservative bend. What does this mean for 2022? I don't know. I'm going to guesstimate another D3 walk for Howard County Council. Republicans probably won't put up a soul. Probably likewise in D2, since the aforementioned La Prette has already said he's going to run for council. So we know how that's going to work out already. And I know there's going to be redistricting, but I do see threats there, Steve, to your point, in Ms. Delmont Small and Ms. Palmer to Howard County progressive and democratic politics. And so far as is anything going to get done on our Board of Education, to your point, Jason, I find it very hard to believe, considering the polarized nature in which many of these races were run. I don't see who the consensus builders are on here. I think Jen Mallow has a possibility to be that person. I think Jolene Mosley has a possibility to be that person. I think Watson, I think Lou have a possibility to be that person. Chow Wu, maybe a little bit less. Catronio, not sure. Delmon Small is going to be sitting there yelling for data. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this is going to pan out. And it's also going to be very interesting to see how the braying sheep who were yelling redistricting, policy 5410, whatever the hell that is, and everything else, it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do, if they're just going to find new things to be angry about, or if they're just going to wither away and have their, wear their members only jackets and drink their twisted teas.
Well, it's in the handbook, Bill, if you bothered to read the handbook, which everyone seems to be fascinated by these days. But I will say one thing. I think there was a bit of a buffering impact from some of those candidates for Board of Education. I mean, there's only so rough you can be. You can run rough. But I think if CDS from District 1 were to run for council, or I think if Suzanne Palmer were to run for County Council District 4 or for County Executive, I think they would be facing an absolutely brutal onslaught in what it will pass for our local media. So if they do decide to go that route, they should be aware that what they experienced this time around was really nothing compared to what it could be.
One would hope.
Well,
Gentlemen,
especially
this has been a tremendously robust and fast-moving edition of Forward Maryland, but we are at about that 50-minute mark when I know people's eyes glaze over. So, Jason, Steve, any final words from either of you?
Steve, after you.
all right. Just wait for somebody to call this presidential thing so that we can get on with the business at hand. I know Biden and Harris are going to be speaking tonight. It'll be interesting to see what they have to say. Be interested to see what Trump tries to say on Twitter in response, and we'll go from there. But let's call the damn thing.
Absolutely, call it. And I guess my last thing is, if anyone's interested in campaign memorabilia, give me a call. We'll have a conversation.
Ladies and gentlemen, the age of no malarkey has begun. And with that, for Steve Hunt and Jason Booms, I'm Bill Woodcock. You've been watching or listening to another rousing edition of Forward Maryland. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.